In 1172, Mei, the most sought-after, eligible girl of Fujian, China, was abducted by the fearsome Pintados warriors. Mei's hands and feet were trembling as the wooden boat navigated the seas on its way to the Pintados' lair. When the boat reached the central part of the modern-day Philippines, Mei was already very weak and could hardly walk from the intense mental torture within her. The leader of the Pintados took Mei as his slave. However, contrary to Mei's expectation that she would be treated harshly as a slave, the leader of the group and his household treated her very kindly. Bagani's younger sister was very close to her. She later learned that the Pintados' leader's name was Bagani. He is very kind to her as well. Bagani stood out as the undisputed leader of the Pintados despite his young age. He did not earn his position by appointment from a hierarchy, but rather he earned it because he showed wise and decisive leadership, and people followed him. Bagani is a leader like no other. He is a decisive warrior with a very agile movement, quick wit, and unwavering courage. Bagani also possessed a handsome visage that he could easily charm women without much effort. Bagani appears as if he is not interested in the opposite sex, but the truth is that he is waiting for a partner who matches and embodies the woman of his dream. As the days passed, Mei began to see Bagani in a new light. Even though she detests the seemingly savage existence of Bagani's people, she finds out that their life is a constant battle for existence. In her short stay with Bagani's people, she discovered that cataclysmic acts of nature constantly visit their place. Typhoons displaced people, and the horrifying aftermath is unbearable to Mei. She believes she could not live in this place. This added to her desire to return to China and her people. But despite all these negative impressions, she also observed that the Pintados are happy people who value the family structure. They are happy just sticking to each other. Mei observed that Bagani is a selfless leader who puts the welfare of his people above his own. Judging from what she observed, Bagani is the kind of leader who would sacrifice himself for the sake of his people. Mei began to admire her captor, but she remained guarded. The events that brought her to this predicament cannot be easily forgotten. As the days passed, Mei began to suffer from depression. The culture shock she experienced did not help her condition. She became weaker and had lost weight. Mei saw Bagani's concern for her. "This is your new life. You'd better adopt. You will like it here. You will see." He advised her, but Mei is inconsolable. One day, Mei saw Bagani boarding a boat in the harbor. An alarm rings a bell in Mei's heart. Is he embarking on another dangerous expedition? Mei asked herself. Something was tugging at her heart. Deep concern for Bagani overtook Mei. 2 days have passed and Bagani had not returned. Mei found herself secretly checking the harbor minute by minute if Bagani's boat had returned, but nothing showed up. Mei's heart pounded with worry and genuine care as she lay awake at night, wondering what had happened to Bagani. Mei's heart had betrayed her emotions. Scenarios that could put Bagani in harm's way are populating Mei's mind. Then one beautiful morning, the sight of Bagani's boat appeared on the horizon. On the shores, Mei was waiting anxiously for Bagani to appear. Mei felt relief when she saw Bagani emerge from the boat. "Where have you been?" Mei asked Bagani, and he nonchalantly presented her with a basket full of something that she had not seen before in her whole life. "Try it, you will like it, I'm sure," Bagani told Mei. "It's a fruit from a neighboring island. Bagani took it for you," Bagani's mother informed Mei. Bagani took the voyage for Mei to taste a fruit the locals called lançons, a small fruit with a sweet, tangy flavor. Mei felt something pluck at her heartstrings when she heard from Bagani's mother that Bagani had taken the voyage just to find a fruit for her. From that day on, Mei grew comfortable with Bagani, which resulted in their frequent conversations during the late afternoon. These late afternoon conversations had become more frequent as the days passed, which resulted in a deep understanding of each other's culture, traditions, and beliefs. And for the first time, Bagani was introduced to Mei's culinary expertise. He liked the Chinese dish that Mei cooked for him. "I have never known a dish as tasty as this in my whole life," he told her in appreciation. Mei, seeing his appreciation of her culinary product, always grabs the opportunity to cook for Bagani whenever it is possible. One morning, Mei woke up to the sound of activity. When she checked, the sight of the Pintados preparing to load their boats with supplies greeted her. They were preparing for a long journey. Bagani was among them. Bagani bid his household goodbye. He spoke to Mei last. "I'm going for an expedition. Take care of yourself." Mei wanted to express her concern on the dangers of Bagani's journey, but no words came out of her mouth. Her tongue seemed glued to her palate for some reason. Bagani boarded the boat without hearing any word from Mei. Days had passed. Days turned into weeks. Then weeks turned into months without any news from Bagani's expedition. The lack of any information on Bagani's whereabouts added to Mei's concern for Bagani, that she regretted sending off Bagani without even saying a word to him. Then news of a shipwreck accident involving Bagani and his men reached the village one day, which alarmed the village and shattered Mei's world. Mei kept crying inconsolably. Her tears flowed freely for the man she once saw as a captor. But behind the emotions, her logic told her she should not be crying for the man who abducted her and put her in this situation. But she cannot deny it. Her heart bleeds and longs for Bagani. Bagani's sister comforted her. Bagani is a strong man. He will survive. Bagani's sister told Mei. Sleepless nights followed. Whenever she fell asleep, Mei would wake up crying in her sleep, and nightmares about the dangers that Bagani faced on his journey haunted her. Then one day, 2 damaged ships with tattered sails arrived in the harbor. Mei's heart leapt in her chest as she recognized the ship as one of the ships that had left earlier. She hurriedly ran to the harbor. She could hardly contain her excitement at the thought of seeing him again, and her heart was beating uncontrollably. But she could not see Bagani from among the survivors who had returned. Mei felt suddenly weak. She could feel her knees buckling. The group left the harbor with 4 ships. Only 2 had returned. When all hope seemed gone, a 3rd ship appeared on the horizon, and Mei wondered with sorrow and apprehension, what if Bagani was not on that ship? As the ship neared the dock, Mei's body was already trembling from apprehension, and involuntarily tears were blurring her vision, and she began to sob spasmodically. People around looked at her with pity, and some offered gestures of comfort and reassurance. The people on board started to leave the ship, but Mei was still waiting for Bagani to descend the ship. Mei waited. Bagani could be the last man to leave the ship, Mei kept saying to herself. But no Bagani showed up. Mei's tears started streaming down her cheeks, her whole body racked with her intense emotion. She felt so alone on that dark, gloomy afternoon. She was so engrossed in her grief when she heard the familiar voice of a man on board the ship, giving instructions. It was Bagani's voice. Mei found herself in Bagani's arms. The walls that she had built up for herself had crumbled totally. "I spent so many nights worrying and crying about you that I almost died from worry because of you," Mei told Bagani with happiness and sincerity, her heart dancing with joy. Their reunion marks a pivotal change in their lives. Bagani found the soulmate that he hoped for, and Mei had her dashing man in shining armor, though he showed up without armor, but with a full-body tattoo. Mei accepted her new life happily and willingly. In the later years of Bagani's life and with Mei's prodding, he crusaded against the practice of slavery and promoted fair trade with China instead of banditry. He gave way to Mei's wishes. He did not want to subject Mei to mental torture when he faced dangers in their raids. Bagani sent an emissary to China, and after many attempts, the emperor finally agreed to establish a trade relationship. The Pintados became the protector of the trade route from China to the Fujian Islands. Mei sent a letter to her family through the emissary that Bagani sent to China. Mei's whole family cried with joy, knowing she was alive and happy in her new life with Bagani, and in return, Mei's mother prepared tea for the emissary and sent Mei's favorite dress to her. Mei and Bagani's progeny were one of the early Chinese-Filipino mestizos that made up the genetic pool of modern-day Filipinos.